Gospel Tangents is supported by users like you. Please support us at gospeltangents.com or on Patreon. Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology, and first daily Mormon history podcast. I'm Rick Bennett. In our final conversation with Mauli Bonner, the director of Flake the movie, we're going to talk about some of the film festivals that he's won, international film festivals, including LA, Paris, and even in Turkey. So it's going to be an amazing conversation. We're also going to talk about the ability that he used those movies to create a Black Pioneer monument at This Is the Place Park. And we're also going to talk about his upcoming monuments with Elijah Abel, and that's actually going to be his next movie. So you won't want to miss this conversation. Check it out. Now, I know the movie won several film festival awards. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It did. So I finished making the film, and granted, I had never made a film before. I never wanted to be a filmmaker. I just knew that the story needed to be told because I worried that other people in our church, no matter what color you are, would learn about this history and they would learn it in the wrong way on Google, in an argument at school or at work. And what is that going to do to their faith? What is that going to do to them? And so I wanted to make this film so that people could learn the stories of this history while connecting to the people. So it didn't feel like we're just talking about them like they weren't actual human beings. So I wanted to tell that story. Made the film. I put everything together. I was just, location and getting the actors and the contracts and all of that. And then the day before we're about to film, I go to lay my head down and I was like, who's the director? I didn't book a director. So I did everything except for book the director for the film. And so I was like, okay, I got to direct this thing. And so this is the night before I'm about to film. So I went on YouTube and was like, when to say action, when to say cut, and watched this little 30-minute video. And that was my little masterclass. Got on set, and it was awesome. Because I heard rolling. I'm like, yeah, I remember that. Sound, yes. Speed, okay. And it was just silent. And I was like, I don't remember this silence. And then my first AD, he tapped me on the shoulder, sir, it's on you, sir, action. I'm like, oh gosh. So that's how it started. But I will tell you, I had dreamed the scenes up every night. Like my wife would wake me up sometimes at night saying, you're not in a movie, you're not there. Because it was just playing in my mind. So when I was on set, I knew every scene, how it should be, how it should go. So I directed it, threw it into film festivals, and it came back winning best film in every film festival that we got in.
So LA, London.
Yeah, LA, London, Rome, Istanbul, Tampa. I mean, there were over 10, and then I turned my email notifications off because it was just a lot of stuff happening. And so, and so it was winning best film across the board. And this is people that weren't members of the church.
Right.
These are people who are just hearing this history, and that told me that our history is not just Black history. It's not just church history, but this is history that connects to anyone because stories of faith and love and overcoming the most impossible things are something that on a human level we can all connect with. So yeah, I did great.
So you don't have to be LDS to like this movie?
No, not at all. I didn't even put it into LDS films because I wasn't sure how the church folk were going to like it. I'm like, I don't know. I'll go out here first, But I did end up doing a screening in Utah, and it was just rented a big theater and just brought a bunch of people there. And after the film, everybody's in tears and then hands are up and questions. And I was like, oh, okay, I can't just put this out and people are left with what just happened, because it was for a lot of people shaking what they thought was like, wait, 1, Black pioneers, 2, slavery, and members enslaving other members. It was just a lot.
Yeah.
And what I didn't want to do was just traumatize people for the sake of traumatizing them, and that's too heavy because I did realize, am I talking too much? I guess this is a podcast, right?
This is why we're here.
Okay,
You're supposed to talk.
I realized that that my white brothers and sisters care so much about this sensitive history. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that they cared until the film, and then seeing me having to console them. They were just broken over it. And I was just like, wow, they want these truths, but it's a lot to take in. And so we did a lot of private screenings where we could do Q&As afterwards and did it that way. And that was when I realized I'm going to be rich. This movie's going to be so good. Everybody loves it. I'm going to be rich. I thought that was going to be it for me. I was like, Lord, you haven't forgotten me. I thought that's what this is all about. And I actually looked up online monuments in Utah, because I wanted to take a picture with the cast and the crew with the film because this is it. And I was like, Black Pioneer Monument, something. And I was like, nothing came up. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Maybe I'm like, enslaved monument of, I just assumed that there's multiple because this is Green Flake. He drove the first wagon. And to learn that I couldn't find any. And I was like, oh, that's what this is about, representation. Because if we don't see it, how do we know it to be true? If we don't see it, how do we know that we were here as Black people? And so I changed it to my nonprofit and made sure everything went towards building a monument to recognize Black pioneers.
So how's that monument coming along?
It's come along to the end. It's done. It's done. So that but here's the process. Gosh, how much time? Long story short, medium?
We got time.
Okay. I'll give you medium.
Okay.
So found out there's no monument, and I was like, okay, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I went and did screenings for church departments, because this is church history, Black history, but also church history, and getting their feedback from the history department, communications, stuff like that. And on the way back of one of my screenings, I was able to run into an apostle. Oh. And I talked to him about the film and said, hey, I made this film, and it's about Green Flake and enslaved and free Black pioneers, but there needs to be a monument at our places, Thistle Base Heritage Park and Temple Square. But that can't happen without you. And he says, okay, well, write me a letter. And I was like, no. We're here right now. Let's seal the deal. Like right now.
Like, if I write you a letter, it's going to go to my stake president.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be excommunicated before I get, So no. So he said, let's take a picture. Let's take a selfie. We took a selfie, and it was Elder Rasband.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I ended up writing a letter to his wife, actually, because it was his wife who I talked to. At first, because he was walking on somewhere, and I talked to Sister Rasband, and I told her about it, and she called him over, and that was just so sweet of her. She didn't have to do that, and I'm sure he's like, didn't we talk about this? I'm sure, I would imagine, but for her to do that was the catapult for all of this, because a week later, 7 days later, I ran into Elder Gong, and then Elder Gong. I told him, I just on the street randomly, and I told Elder Gong, hey, I made this film. And
you ran into Elder Gong on the street?
On the street. I mean, listen, if I'm being more specific, when we took that selfie, me and Elder Rasband, I looked at the time and it was 5:32, and I was like, that's my lucky number. I was like, 5:32, And then so the next week, 7 days later, I'm in Salt Lake because I'm about to do a benefit concert to promote the release of the film. The film wasn't even out yet, or to the public, it wasn't out. Mm-hmm. It did the circuit of festivals.
Right.
But I saw a man walking. I was like, "Gosh, that looks like Elder Gong." I pull over and I'm like, "Elder Gong?" He's like, "Yes." I was like, "Oh my gosh, can I walk and talk with you?" And he's like, "Sure." And so we walk and talk, and I tell him I made this film, and his name is Green Flake, but monuments. There's no monuments. People to know who they are. This is the place, Heritage Park, Temple Square. And he's like, right, I love what you're doing. It's great stuff. And I'm like, oh, but he's like, yeah, know all about it. It's wonderful. You have a concert coming up tomorrow, but the film's not out yet. I was like, you blew up my elevator pitch. I don't know what to say. And then he's like, well, keep up the good work. These things take time, but we love what you're doing. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, can we take a selfie? We took a selfie, and it was 5:32 again, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, 5:32. And then 6 days later, I'm home. And granted, I live in LA, so I've been flying back and forth and back and forth. And I told my wife, I'm not flying this time. This time I'm be in town. And I shouldn't have said that, because 6 days later, as I'm at home, I had this prompting, this feeling, this urge that I needed to go back to Salt Lake. And so I got on my knees and I prayed. I was like, Lord, am I supposed to go back? And the Spirit, the Lord spoke to me and said, I'm sending you someone at 5:32. And I was like, and it was just so clear. But I was like, but I just told my wife I'd be in town. And I'm like, I'm already in the doghouse because I've been traveling so much. I'm like, Lord, I'll go, but just Saturday, not Friday. If I can go, but just a day later. And so I negotiated with the Lord, which I had never done in the whole process of making the film. And
You and
doing
Abraham.
yeah. I was like, oh no. But I realized that the next day. So Friday came. This is the seventh day later. And it's the morning. And I had this terrible, uncomfortable feeling because I felt like I needed to be somewhere the Lord asked me to be. And I had talked my way out of it, you know. So I called my wife and I told her, I have to go have a meeting. And then of course she's like, what, with who? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, okay, you know, but she comes home, I book a flight, I get to Salt Lake, and I'm now walking around Salt Lake. It's just a few minutes before 5:32 and it's pouring rain and nobody's outside, and it's 5:31 and still nobody. I have my briefcase with all my materials and my pitch deck, and I have everything. I'm wearing my good suit, and it turns 5:32. And I go and I stand under this big shade tree and I pull out my phone and I give myself a motivational speech that, you know, you did it. You did what the Lord wanted you to do. Even though nothing happened, it's okay. You know, I just needed to pick me up. And then a car pulls up like 30 yards from me and a man gets out in a suit and he stands under a big tree, like another shade tree while it's pouring rain. And he just stands there in his suit. And so I look at my phone and it's still 5:32. I'm like, I'm going to be late for my meeting. So I run over to him and I was like, I'm here for you. I have a meeting with you. And then he was like, okay. And I said, I'm sorry. I didn't think this far. I don't know what to say. I just flew in. I don't know what to say. And he says, I don't know what to say either. And I was like, okay, what's your name? Because I couldn't make a match. I was like, he's not one of the apostles. I couldn't figure it out. And he said, I'm a bishop. I was like, oh, you're a bishop. And I thought, well, a bishop, what's that, 300-400 people in a ward maybe? You can let them know and spread the word. So I gave him my pitch. This is Green Flake and a movie and Black Pioneers. And he cuts me off and says, yes, wonderful. Love what you're doing. There was a great pitch this week. Loved it. We never go over, but we went over. But for this one, I was like, I'm sorry, who are you? He said, Bishop Casse. I'm like,
the presiding bishop.
Yes. I was like, Bishop Casse. I was like, wait, presiding? He's like, yes. Oh, over the whole? Yes. I was like, oh my gosh, my meeting is with you. And he says, I don't know. And then I was like, hey, but he said, I want to tell you that what you're doing, it feels like love. It feels like love. And that meant so much to me because when you're talking about history of enslavement and it's controversial history, it's painful history, and for him to say it feels like love, that meant a lot to me. And so I told him, thank you for this meeting. I think we should end it before I mess it up. And he's like, no. I'm going to see President Nelson next week. He'll be happy to know we met. And I was like, wow. I was thinking, like, can I go? Please take me with you. That's what I was thinking. But I was like, okay, great. Well, can we take a selfie? And so we took a selfie. And I was like, what were you doing standing here? And he was like, well, it was raining. I just got my hair cut. I didn't want to mess it up. And I was like, oh, wow. And that was that. And so shortly after that, met with the place Heritage Park. Ellis Ivory was incredible. Ellis Ivory, his descendant, was with Green Flake on the Pioneer Trek as we were talking. He was like, well, my great-grandfather, Matthew, met up with John Brown. John Brown was the overseer, the one looking after Hark and Oscar, who were enslaved people.
Not the John Brown's Rebellion gang.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. and so you have now Ellis's descendant who was with Green Flake when they came into the valley 2 days ahead of Brigham Young. They laid under the stars together. And so I think Ellis was really touched by that, and he started running full speed ahead to make this monument happen. In less than a year, he calls Kem Gardner, and Kem Gardner, he didn't even ask anything of Kem. He just told him, and Kem's like, let's make it happen. What do we got to do? How much is it? And then we had to pump the brakes, like, hold on, Kem, we got to get people involved here. And so Kem was incredible, and a bunch of people donated and pitched towards it, and everything from the film went towards the monument, and the church put in on it. And now there's this beautiful, beautiful monument at This Is the Place Heritage Park. It's got Jane Manning James there. She was not enslaved, but to not have her there,
right,
just didn't make sense, So Jane, her two children, Sylvester and Silas.
Okay.
And then you have Oscar and his brother, Hark, because they were two brothers. They're next to each other. And then you have Green Flake in the middle of them all at that monument.
And no Elijah Abel.
No Elijah Abel. Not yet. Not
That's your
yet.
next movie,
Temple
right?
Square. Not yet. That is honestly, that's my next project. That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Because the Green Flake project was supposed to be the Elijah Abel project, right?
Exactly. So when I started, it was Elijah Abel. There's so much more in Elijah Abel.
Right.
So I was just doing everything I could to learn and write about Elijah Abel. And then I just felt drawn to Green Flake, even though there was like nothing on him. And so now I'm getting back where I started to dig into Elijah Abel. Yeah.
Very good. So I'm sure you'll be talking to Russell Stevenson because he wrote the biography.
Yeah. I've talked with Russell briefly, but I had these roundtable discussions and I wanted him to be a part of them. So he'll probably be a part of them later, but he was going to be in Ghana at the same time I was filming. But yeah, I'm involving a number of historians, professors, authors to be a part of this. It's a docuseries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there will be some dramatized episodes, but also us following the history in minutes and what happened when. Yeah.
I remember when I met you, and then you said, "Oh, I know who you are," and I was like, "What?"
Yeah. I feel like I'm sitting here. I mean, I work with celebrities, but I'm like, this is a celebrity right here. I watch you. Like, no, because you have all of the folks that people need to listen to. Like,
Right.
Honestly. Like,
have you seen my Russell Stevenson interview?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course. Of course. Like, yeah. Like you gave me so much information just from watching you. You were a big part of my education and my journey. So I'm so grateful for you.
Well, how do I feel? I'm embarrassed.
No, I mean honestly, I just hope that everybody doesn't just watch this one episode. They have to watch it all because you have all the pieces of the puzzle and you keep adding to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I didn't have all the pieces. I didn't have Green Flake till today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and Elijah Abel. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that project?
Yeah. So if I'm being transparent, from the beginning, I have felt this push in my back, prompting of the Spirit, Temple Square, and This Is the Place Heritage Park. There has to be representation there. There has to be somewhere where people can go and say, here's our history. Here's the stories. And people shouldn't have to learn about our history from Google and other places.
They can learn it from Gospel Tangents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I want there to be the history or some type of history of the priesthood as it pertains to Black people on Temple Square in some art form. Just because the sister missionaries, when they walk around, and every time I come into town, I always walk around a little bit and just wait for the missionaries to snag me because they always do. And then I'll ask them a few tough questions, like, so what happened? Or they feel tough, but they're normal. What happened? Is this like a racist thing going on here? What's the deal with the priesthood?
Oh boy,
yeah.
I would have hated that question as a 19-year-old missionary.
Right. And they still do. And they shouldn't have to hate it because we now are getting so much of the information. And I want those sister missionaries to be able to say, let me take you somewhere. And we'll walk over to the art and they can say, so this is Elijah Abel, 1836, he had the priesthood. This is Q. Walker Lewis. And this is what happened at this time. And then this was gone. Thankfully, it came back in 78. Just tell the history. That would feel so good to me instead of trying to figure out how to handle this.
Well, God was racist, right?
Yeah, right. And it's like, and each missionary couple has a different answer because they're figuring it out themselves. And so anyway, this Elijah Abel project, it is going to follow the lives of Black people, especially Elijah Abel, as it pertains to the priesthood, to find out what happened, who had it, when was it taken away, what was said, and when. And so that's what this documentary is going to do.
Cool. When can we expect it out?
2025. So this year.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know. Was that close?
Yeah. So this year I'm filming. So I'm filming all this year and raising money. Yeah. So I'm
So songwriter and filmmaker. We're gonna have to. Put them both
I'm not a
together now.
filmmaker. I just made a film and now I'm making this documentary and then I'm riding off into the sunset.
Oh, wait a minute. I got another project for you.
I know.
Q. Walker Lewis.
Oh, I know. I know.
He's got some great stories.
Incredible.
And I haven't done a big deep dive on him yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to do a deep dive on him. I've spent more time on like Elijah and Biddy, but Q. Walker Lewis, yeah, he's a story in his own. I have to tell you,
You got to get a trilogy, right?
I know, but it's like, but I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just making films. Like, and then I'm gonna go back to my normal life and making music. You grilled me today.
Your normal life hanging out with Katy Perry. Huh?
Yes, exactly. It's very normal. It's normal. I feel like you grilled me. Those BYU questions were hard.
Yeah.
There wasn't a grill. That's not fair. But those are hard questions to answer. As I was answering them, I'm like, I don't know that I've heard people say these things out loud. But I think we have to. I appreciate you asking me hard questions, and I hope.
Well, we're trying not to sugarcoat anything.
Yeah. And and I don't have the answers, but I hope there's more conversations to help me find them, more conversations like these.
Well, cool. So I think I usually go about 2 hours, but I think I'm running out of questions.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I will tell you that the descendants of Green Flake, that was something I messed up on. So here's my confession. I just started running so fast. I learned about the history and I just wrote it, 200 pages. And like, okay, film. 3 months later. And then the descendants reached out to me. What are you doing with our family? And I didn't even think about that, which is not the way it should be. And so I love that we have an opportunity to acknowledge people who are descended from enslaved ancestry, and these are their families, and these are their stories. And I'm hoping that more descendants will start to come to the surface because we just don't hear about a lot of them, and most of them aren't with the church anymore. And so, yeah.
Because of the enslaved ancestry, is that what? And the bad treatment by church members.
Well, I'm sure that contributes to it, but then again, you can look at any family of any race and people are leaving the church for different reasons, and a lot of them are the same reasons. When it comes to the history of race or polygamy or whatever else, and so I know that they've had their trials as well. But yeah, talking about this with transparency and bringing these stories to the surface, I think that's what's going to heal us, even though it's going to be painful along the way, I think.
Well, cool. Well, Mauli, I want to invite you back when you do your next documentary on Elijah Abel.
Yeah.
Because he's another, can I say, hero of mine?
Yeah.
I can't believe the testimony that he has. It's so inspiring to me, despite the mistreatment that he suffered several times. I mean, the Russell Stevenson book, you gotta read that, because I won't give it away, but the whole Canada thing was just crazy to me. And to see the way he was mistreated and he was so firm in the faith.
Yeah.
Is just inspiring to me. So
it is. It's inspiring to me as well. And I think if people knew the stories of these Black pioneers that endured things that we just hear about them and it shakes our testimony, but they lived it. Like Elijah Abel was sitting there with the leaders of the church petitioning to get into the temple. You know, he's like, I would imagine he would feel like, I've tithed, you know, I've labored on it. Can I not seal my family? And for that to not happen and him still hold his faith.
I know, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, so it's like, for me, that's the example of, okay, his testimony is rooted in something way deeper than the people, the buildings, the policies, and not that all those things don't matter, but it's got to be deeper than that.
Right.
It has to be if we're going to survive with the faith intact, you know?
Very good. All right. Well, we'd love to have you back.
I'll be back.
Next year, I guess. But thank you, Mauli Bonner. Is there any concerts or anything coming up with your Bonner Unity Choir?
No. Okay. So let me clarify that. Okay. So my family is the singing group. So the Bonner family, and then my mom,
which are amazing.
Thank you. And then my mom has a choir, the Unity Gospel Choir, and so sometimes
those are two different
things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But sometimes we're her kids, so she's like, "Come on, I need a soloist." We're like, "All right, mom." So then everybody thinking it's all the same thing. But I will say, just keep your ears on high alert for when you do hear about this Elijah Abel project, because there will come a time where I'm going to be fundraising to the public.
Okay.
Because I want the people to be a part of the project, and not for it just to happen, but for people to have a stake in it. And when they go see the art, they can be like, I was a part of that.
And so can we go to the This Is the Place monument and see Green Flake now?
Yes.
It's already there.
Yeah, it's already
and then
there.
What about, and you're going to put a statue at Temple Square?
So that's what we're working on right now, is what is that art going to look like? Whether it's stained glass or a painting or a statue or a monument, like what and where and how, all that is in discussions now. But I will say this, I think I should say this. I know we keep ending and have a little something more, but I'll just say this, that as much as we're learning some of this difficult history, and some of it is new for a lot of folks, you have to know that I have not faced any pushback on the things that I'm doing. I'm not getting people saying, "Oh, why are you doing that? You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You do this." I believe that our church leadership is wanting us to continue to tell these stories, and just because it's not coming from their lips doesn't mean that we don't tell it, that we don't share it in our classes, that we don't implement it in our testimonies. These are stories that should be shared, and I appreciate the support of the church through it, because I know this is uncharted territory that we're all engaging in as we're uncovering this history. And you've been doing it longer than I have, So I'm sure there must be. I guess I have a question for you. How has that been?
We're not supposed to answer questions.
Well, if I asked you one question, my one question would be.
I'm just teasing.
Okay. I would say, did you feel like you were doing something wrong? Because you were doing this when people weren't really doing this. Talking
with
about
race, you mean?
Yeah, like I have found that you have always been a step ahead. And
well, thank you.
And how does that feel? Was it scary? Or do you feel like you're doing something wrong? Or you feel right?
I think I've said this before, but I remember 1978. I was a young boy. I had grown up in Utah. In 1978, I was living in New Hampshire, I believe, and there was this announcement that blacks could get the priesthood, and it was like, blacks couldn't hold the priesthood till now?
Oh my
really?
gosh, no.
I mean, I didn't know any black people, so it wasn't an issue to me.
Wow.
But I was like, I didn't know that.
Wow.
And it has always bothered me. And I still remember on my mission teaching black people, I mean, this is probably 10 years after, and I was just hoping that they would never ask me, and nobody ever did.
Wow.
But I've always felt like, and I don't know why, but I've written a 100-page paper on the history of the priesthood ban. I've tried to get it published twice. Haven't gotten it published, and it's 10 years old. But I would still have to publish it sometime. But it almost feels like, even though, like I didn't even know, I just feel like this penance, like,
Wow.
guilty. And so, for whatever reason, it's always really interested me, and I just love learning about it. And Paul Reeve and Matt Harris have a couple of books coming out. They said this year. I hope I'm the first one.
Yeah.
Because I love both of them. They're both amazing scholars, and I've learned so much from them. And so, even though I had nothing to do with it, it just feels like penance to me.
Wow.
To learn more, and to feature people like you that do amazing things. And so that's.
I love that. I love that you found a way to do something with the shame and guilt that comes with the history, because I just think that paralyzes people. It's just like it paralyzes them.
And like I said, it's easier. And I didn't realize this. It's easier for me to talk to black people about racism than white people.
Wow.
It's hard for white people to admit that we have skeletons in our closet.
Yeah.
We get defensive about it. And, I talked to Summer Rain. I don't know if you know her. She's Burgess Owen's daughter.
Oh, yeah. I know she is.
I just like to learn. And I think if we can go into this, we as white people can go into this without defensiveness.
Yeah.
Just, I want to learn, I want to understand. It would go a long way towards healing.
Right.
And just find out what happened. None of us are responsible. I'm not responsible for what happened 200 years ago. But to learn about it and to empathize with it, I think, that's the best we can do.
Yeah, you said it exactly the way I like to say it, is that none of us were there, like none of us. Fortunately and unfortunately, that was not our life to have, is to battle with what they battled with 100 and something years ago. But we're here now. Mm-hmm. So like, what are we going to do? Because we have a responsibility now. We can't just continue to push it. That carpet is so messed up. So much is underneath there. We can't shove anything else under there, So how are we going to deal with this history today without carrying the weight of what they did back then? Wow.
And we don't need to, but we get too defensive, and we just need to understand.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love that we are able to have these conversations and people to know that it's okay. We can talk about it, and we love each other even more now after talking about it, instead of avoiding it.
Even though you're a Lakers fan.
I know. I was going to say, I wasn't going to do this. If he wears a Jazz shirt, I'm walking out. But yeah, so this is great. This has really been great.
All right. Well, Mauli Bonner, I'm looking forward to more of your projects. Go see Green Flake, the movie. It's on Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Amazon. So the distributor changed the name on Amazon. So Black Pioneer under Amazon. Okay. So if you have Amazon Prime, Black Pioneer. But if you want the DVD, which I think you should get the DVD, Deseret Bookstores, his name is Green Flake.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Mauli, I'm excited to have you back on in a year or so and to talk about Elijah Abel. And thank you so much for being here on Gospel Tangents.
I'll be back.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed a conversation with Mauli Bonner. Mauli, thank you so much for sitting down with me and flying all the way out from Los Angeles. So it was really fun, really great conversation. In our next conversation, I'm excited to have a couple of other authors, Eric Huntsman and Deidre Green.
My name is Deidre Green. I am an assistant professor of Latter-day Saints / Mormon Studies at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California.
We were able to do, I think, things with this that a lot of times when we're writing in a strictly Latter-day Saint venue, you can't as much, right? I thought we were able to be a little deeper in terms of our treatment. And I don't want to say freer because it's not that we're restricted, but just the conceived audience was different. And so it gave us a chance to really find people and encourage them to approach their particular topic really in depth and with a lot of openness.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.